You wake up to the kind of sun that doesn't just shine, it scorches. There's no gentle breeze, no cloud cover, just relentless, punishing heat. The dirt beneath you is cracked like shattered glass, and it stings your skin like sandpaper. This isn't the Hollywood version of the Wild West. There are no stagecoaches, no heroic duels, and certainly no ice-cold lemonade at the ready. This is the real deal, unforgiving, raw, and within moments of waking, you're already in danger. Your throat is dry, not the "I need a drink" dry, but the kind of dryness that feels like your mouth is lined with ash. You reach for your canteen, grateful for the familiar shape, but when you tip it, only 3 gulps remain. That's all you've got between you and the brutal death of dehydration. And it's not even noon. The air itself seems angry, each breath burns your lungs, each step kicks up a fine dust that clings to your eyes, lips, and skin. There's no water in sight, no trees, just miles of empty, sun-baked horizon. This is the first and perhaps the most important lesson of the Wild West. Nature does not care about your survival. In the modern world, we underestimate just how fragile we are. Hungry? You order food. Tired? You rest on a mattress. Thirsty? You twist a tap. But in the Wild West, survival required constant calculation. There were no convenience stores, no GPS to lead you to the nearest oasis. It was just you, the land, and your will to endure. Without water, your body begins to fail quickly. By the time you start feeling thirsty, you're already dehydrated. Headaches creep in, your vision blurs, your muscles cramp, and your mind begins to drift in and out of hallucination. The sun becomes a mocking companion overhead, chasing you with heat that strips you of energy, reason, and hope. Let's say you stumble upon a stream, a dirty, shallow trickle winding through dry brush. You drop to your knees and drink, because you have to. You know it's not clean, but what's the alternative? Within hours, the consequences begin. Stomach pain, nausea, diarrhea. You've just ingested a cocktail of bacteria and parasites. Without modern medicine, there's nothing to stop it. You'll be losing more fluids than you drink, and in this heat, that's a death sentence. But let's say, somehow, you keep moving. You're blistered now, your skin peeling from sunburn. There's no sunscreen here, no aloe vera, and there's certainly no dermatologist waiting back in town. Your lips crack open and bleed, your eyes burn from sweat and dust, and still you walk, because stopping means dying. There's no food either. You might find a cactus or dig up a root if you're lucky, or if you even know what to look for. The truth is, most people dropped into this world wouldn't have a clue what's safe to eat. One wrong bite and you're poisoned. A single misstep and you're face to face with a venomous snake, a swarm of fire ants, or worse. Nothing at all, just empty silence. Emptiness that eats away at your resolve. The Wild West wasn't just a test of strength, it was a test of knowledge. People back then knew the land. They learned what plants healed and what ones killed. They knew how to dig a well or track animals to water. They respected the dangers around them. But you're dropped here with nothing but modern instincts. Instincts that are useless out here. As the hours drag on, exhaustion sets in. Not the kind of tired you feel after a workout, but the kind that roots itself deep into your bones. Every movement becomes a battle. Your body starts to cannibalize itself for energy. Muscles break down, coordination falters, and your brain, it starts to betray you. You see things that aren't there. Shadows of trees, the sparkle of water, the outline of a building, mirages. Your mind is so desperate for relief it invents illusions to keep you going. Eventually you may fall. Not from injury, but from complete shutdown. Your body overheats to the point where it simply gives up. You might not even notice when you hit the ground. Everything will feel distant, dreamlike. And if no one finds you, and let's be honest, they won't, your story ends right there, face down in the dirt, another nameless soul, lost to the land. Even seasoned frontiersmen struggled to survive the environment. Entire wagon trains perished crossing deserts. Explorers went mad, gold miners vanished. Farmers watched their crops wither in the heat. The Wild West was a graveyard of good intentions and failed dreams, all because people underestimated the land itself. And yet, you're still here. Barely. You've made it to dusk. The sun is finally retreating. Relief, right? Not quite. Now the cold sets in. Temperatures plummet by 30 or even 40 degrees. The same desert that tried to roast you now wants to freeze you. Your clothes are damp with sweat, and the chill cuts right through them. You shiver uncontrollably. Your muscles cramp, your teeth chatter, and the quiet howl of the wind returns, only this time, it feels like it's laughing at you. You try to build a fire, but you don't have matches. Flint and steel? Forget it. You fumble with sticks, cursing every survival show you've ever watched for making it look easy. After an hour of failure, you give up. Curling into a ball, you try to stay warm, but the ground is hard, sharp, unforgiving. Sleep doesn't come, only exhaustion and the sound of coyotes in the distance. This is the reality of the Wild West. Not saloons and showdowns, but silence, suffering, and survival in a world that gave no second chances. And this is only your first day. The sun hasn't even fully risen yet, but you're already alert. Because in the Wild West, the real danger isn't always the land, it's the people. You've made it through a brutal night, barely warmed by the embers of a fire you finally got going with dried sagebrush and frustration. You thought the cold and hunger were the worst of it, but now, with daylight creeping over the hills, you realize something far more terrifying. You're not alone out here. A distant sound, hoofbeats, rhythmic, purposeful, getting louder. In the modern world, strangers bring curiosity, maybe even opportunity, but here, out in the untamed reaches of the American frontier, strangers usually mean trouble. You scramble to your feet, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to hide, but it's too late, they've seen you. 4 men on horses ride toward you, fast. Dust kicks up behind them like smoke from a storm. They don't wave, they don't call out, they just close in. There are no police out here, no 911. If they want what you have, your horse, your water, your boots, or your life, there's no one to stop them. They're not wearing badges, but they don't need to. The gleam of a revolver on one man's hip tells you everything. This land answers to whoever has the most bullets and the fewest morals. One of them smiles. But it's not kind, it's mocking. They circle around you slowly, like wolves testing a wounded animal. They ask questions you know better than to answer. Where you headed? Got any silver? Travelin' alone, are ya? Each question drips with threat disguised as small talk. And in the blink of an eye, it happens. One man dismounts, he gets too close, reaches for your bag, you step back, he grabs your arm. In the city, you'd scream, you'd call for help. But here, the nearest town could be 100 miles away, and even if you reached it, that doesn't guarantee protection. Lawmen were often outnumbered, outgunned, or just plain corrupt. Many sheriffs had more in common with outlaws than they liked to admit, and some were outlaws with a star on their chest. You try to talk your way out, to be calm, reasonable, but reasoning doesn't work with men who enjoy watching fear rise in another's eyes. These aren't just bandits, they're bored, dangerous men who see people like you as entertainment. Then, just as quickly as it began, they laugh, spit on the ground, and ride off. You're lucky. This time it was just intimidation. But next time, it could be worse. Much worse. Because the Wild West wasn't just lawless, it was predatory. You didn't just have to watch your back, you had to watch everyone else's too. That smiling merchant in town? He might shortchange you or poison your food. The friendly drifter at the saloon? He might be a wanted man with 5 dead bodies behind him and nothing to lose. And the well-dressed traveler could be a card sharp, a con man, or worse. There's a saying out here, trust gets you killed, and it's not an exaggeration. Stagecoaches were prime targets for highwaymen. You might be sitting with your belongings when suddenly the driver yells, "Road agents," and you're yanked out, face down in the dust as masked men rifle through your belongings. If they're in a good mood, they leave you tied up. If they're not, they bury you where they found you. Women, the dangers multiplied. Assault, abduction, forced marriage, even being sold into brothels, all were disturbingly common, and the few women who carried guns were often labeled as unnatural or mad, even though it was the only real way to survive. If you were alone, you were a target. If you were with someone, you might still be a target. And sometimes the most brutal danger wasn't the outlaw, but the town itself. Gambling halls and saloons were dens of violence. A single insult over a spilled drink or a card game gone wrong could erupt into a brawl or a gunfight. And don't think duels were like in the movies, dramatic standoffs at high noon. Most shootouts were ugly, clumsy, chaotic. They happened in alleys, inside taverns, at night. One man flinched, the other fired. Simple, savage, final. And if you died, the undertaker would strip your body of valuables before laying you in a shallow grave. Maybe someone would say a few words, maybe not. The West didn't stop for the dead. You might think finding a group to ride with is safer, safety in numbers, right? But that only works if you trust them. And trust, again, is the currency of fools. The same man who shares a meal with you tonight might slit your throat tomorrow for your boots. Desperation makes monsters of men, and in the Wild West, desperation was a daily companion. The law tried to keep up. Towns had marshals. Some were brave, some were decent, but most were outgunned, outmanned, and overwhelmed. Jurisdiction lines were blurry. A killer could commit murder in one territory, then ride across a river and disappear. There was no FBI, no fingerprint database. If you changed your name and kept your mouth shut, you could reinvent yourself with ease, until your past caught up. Even bounty hunters, those heroes of dime novels, were often just as bad as the men they chased. Some framed innocent people. Others killed for sport. All were paid for bringing in bodies, not justice. And what if you were accused of something, true or not? Then the town turned on you. A mob forms. There's no trial, no jury, just a rope, a tree, and a group of men with righteous anger and no interest in facts. Lynchings were horrifyingly common, especially in areas where prejudice ran deep. Justice wasn't blind, it was angry, frightened, and easily manipulated. This was the human Wild West, not majestic and adventurous, but paranoid and ruthless. You walk with your head down now, not out of submission but calculation. You avoid eye contact, speak only when necessary, and keep your hand near whatever weapon you can find, whether it's a knife, a rock, or a rusty old pistol. Because you've learned the truth. Out here, survival isn't just about beating the heat or finding food. It's about surviving other people. And just like the sun that scorches the land by day or the cold that cuts through you at night, danger doesn't sleep. The sun rises over a dusty horizon, painting the sky in fire-red streaks. You wake not to the comfort of your soft bed, but to the bray of a stubborn mule and the crunch of boots on dry gravel. There's no fresh coffee brewing, no hot shower waiting, just the chill of morning air and the realization that you've been sleeping on the ground, a thin wool blanket doing little against the hard earth and nighttime cold. You reach for your boots and shake out a scorpion. Welcome to the Wild West. Within the first 10 minutes of your day, your body begins to understand just how out of place it is. There's no vitamin-enriched cereal or protein shake, just some stale bread, jerky, and, if you're lucky, a strip of bacon cooked over a campfire that took an hour to start. The smoke burns your eyes, and every bite tastes like ashes. You're sore, your mouth is dry, and you haven't even left camp yet. As you mount your horse, assuming you even know how to ride, you feel muscles working in ways they never have before. The saddle creaks under your weight, and within the first hour, you're already shifting around to escape the inevitable pain forming under your thighs. It's not like riding a bike or sitting in a car. You're exposed to everything. The blistering sun, dust storms, biting wind. You squint toward the trail and already you're second-guessing your decision to wear that extra flannel shirt. Your job for the day? Survive. That might mean guarding a wagon train against outlaws, helping a rancher move a herd of unpredictable cattle, or digging through rocky ground with your bare hands to extract gold flakes that probably aren't even there. You'll haul water from a creek crawling with mosquitoes and watch your supplies dwindle, knowing the nearest town is a day's ride away. And even if you get there, there's no guarantee of shelter or safety. Law was often just a suggestion, and justice was swift and brutal. The people around you aren't wearing cowboy hats and smiling in slow motion. They're hardened, sunburned, and suspicious. Everyone carries a weapon, knives, pistols, rifles, and they know how to use them. A wrong word in the saloon can turn into a gunfight. Don't even think about gambling unless you're ready to lose more than your money. You watch a man get thrown through the swinging doors over a disputed poker hand, his blood mixing with the spit and whiskey on the floor. No one even flinches. Your body, used to a regulated environment, is now working overtime. You're constantly dehydrated. You might have dysentery from that river water, or worse, your skin is blistering from the sun, and there's no such thing as sunscreen or aloe vera. There's no Advil for your headache, no doctor nearby if you fall off your horse and break your arm. Infections are common and often fatal. A simple cut could be your end. By mid-afternoon, you're exhausted, but the day is far from over. If you're part of a cattle drive, you're on high alert. Wolves, cougars, even cattle rustlers are a constant threat. If you're a homesteader, You're either tending to an unforgiving patch of land or repairing something that's broken for the 5th time this week. There's no YouTube tutorial to show you how, no electrician, no plumber, just you, a rusty tool, and the hope that your makeshift fix holds until next time. Night comes quickly, and with it, new dangers. If you're outside of a town, the darkness swallows everything. You hear coyotes howling in the distance. Maybe something rustles too close to your fire. Maybe it's just the wind. Or maybe it's someone else. Someone who saw your campfire and thinks you might have something worth stealing. There's no calling 911. You either defend yourself or hope they pass you by. Every crack of a twig sends your heart racing. And let's talk about sleep, if you get any. Even if you're in a town, you're probably staying in a boarding house with straw-stuffed mattresses crawling with lice. The walls are paper thin. Someone's always coughing. Tuberculosis, maybe. Hygiene? Limited at best. Bathing is a luxury, and your skin is coated in a film of dust, sweat, and animal smell. Good luck getting clean when the water is ice cold and you're sharing a basin with 6 other men. But perhaps the hardest part isn't the physical discomfort, it's the mental strain. The Wild West wasn't just physically unforgiving, it was psychologically brutal. Loneliness, isolation, constant fear of attack, and the knowledge that one wrong move could mean death. People drank heavily not just for pleasure but for numbness. Saloon culture was born out of the need to forget. You look into the eyes of the men and women around you and they all carry that same distant look, the stare of someone who's seen too much, lost too much, and knows too well that life here can turn on a dime. So by the time the second day rolls around, assuming you've made it that far, your back is aching, your face is burned, and your hands are raw. You've heard gunshots, smelled blood, and tasted fear. You miss your phone, your AC, your running water. You start to understand why so many didn't last, why so many turned to crime or drink or madness. The West might have been wild, but it wasn't romantic. It was survival. It was brutal. And for most of us today, it would be utterly unlivable. If you made it through even this description, imagine what it was like to live it. The real Wild West wasn't a movie. It wasn't a slow-motion shootout under a blazing sun. It was sweat, struggle, sacrifice. And chances are, if you or I were dropped into that world for even a single day, we wouldn't survive. If you found this glimpse into the gritty truth of the Old West fascinating, consider subscribing for more raw, unfiltered history that pulls back the curtain on the myths we think we know. Leave a comment. Would you have survived a day in the Wild West? And don't forget to hit that like button if you're glad you live in the 21st century. Great, here's the second 1,000-word script on the next main point from the video: why you wouldn't survive a day in the Wild West, this time focusing on deadly diseases and lack of medicine in the same immersive storytelling style. You wake up coughing. It's a dry, hacking sound that echoes off the walls of the wooden shack you're calling home. Your chest feels tight. Your mouth bone dry. There's no cough syrup, no Tylenol, no urgent care clinic you can drive to. Just you, wrapped in a wool blanket that smells like mildew and smoke. And that cough? It's not going anywhere. Welcome to the Wild West, where sickness doesn't knock, it kicks the door down. Out here, you're not just fighting bandits or the elements. You're in a daily battle against diseases most people today couldn't even pronounce. Typhoid, cholera, tuberculosis, dysentery. And once they strike, they hit fast. No warning, no treatment, no mercy. The Wild West wasn't just wild because of outlaws, it was wild because it was a breeding ground for infections that could wipe out entire towns. There's a river nearby. You use it to wash your face, maybe even drink from it if you're desperate enough. It looks clean. But upstream, someone's washing laundry. A cow just waded through it. And 2 miles up, a body lies face down in the water, slowly decomposing. You don't know it, but you've just swallowed a microscopic death scent. By mid-afternoon, you're sweating, not from the sun, but from fever. Your joints ache, you can't keep food down, and the nearest doctor is 30 miles away, if he's even there. Most doctors in the frontier days weren't formally trained. Some had read a few medical books, others just had a strong stomach and a set of tools. You lie down, hoping to sleep it off. But now your stomach cramps. You're too weak to walk, and the bucket by your bed is filling up faster than you can empty it. Blood in your stool, blurred vision, you're going fast. Let's say you do get to a doctor. You're lucky if he has a scalpel, a bottle of whiskey, and a saw. Germ theory is still new, misunderstood, or flat out ignored. There's no sterile environment, no gloves. The same instrument might be used on 3 other patients before you, rinsed in cold water and wiped with a dirty rag. Antiseptics? Uncommon. Antibiotics? Non-existent. You might be better off staying sick. And the worst part? People expect you to die. They've seen it before, too many times. You're not the first person to be carried in on a stretcher, and you won't be the last. Entire families were wiped out in weeks. Mothers buried 2 children in 1 month. Husbands lost wives to fevers that doctors didn't understand and couldn't name. It's not dramatic. It's just life. And death? Diseases didn't just come from dirty water or poor hygiene. They came from the very air you breathed. Take tuberculosis. It was so common it earned a nickname, consumption. It crept into your lungs and slowly drained the life out of you. Coughing up blood, wasting away, night sweats, weakness. And when someone got it, they didn't always stay home. They still worked, traveled, coughed in public. The air you're breathing now might be laced with it. No masks, no quarantine, just hope. Imagine a town with 1 bathhouse for 50 men, 1 outhouse, if that. Rats everywhere, flies in the food, people rarely bathed, clothes went unwashed for weeks, cuts turned black, teeth rotted in mouths, and what passed for medicine? Snake oil, literal or figurative. Traveling salesmen peddled tonics claiming to cure everything from baldness to bullet wounds. Most were alcohol, cocaine, or opium mixed with water. They didn't heal, they numbed. Until you ran out or overdosed. Pregnancy was a gamble. Childbirth was deadly. No epidurals, no prenatal care. If you were a woman in the West, you knew someone who had died giving birth, or you would soon. Midwives did their best, but a breech birth, a torn uterus, or a simple infection could end it all within hours. And for the baby, infant mortality was so high many parents didn't even name their child until they turned 1. Naming them too soon just made it harder. Let's talk about wounds. Maybe you survived a shootout, a lucky break, bullet grazed your shoulder. Feels like a win, right? Wrong. That wound might fester. Without antibiotics, your body has to fight on its own, and it's already weak from heat, poor nutrition, and dehydration. Within a few days, the edges go red, then black, fever sets in. You're not dying from the bullet, you're dying from the bacteria riding shotgun on that bullet. And if they do operate, it's not in a hospital bed with white sheets, it's on a wooden table. No anesthesia, unless you count a shot of whiskey and someone holding you down. Screaming wasn't uncommon, passing out was better. Infection was likely, survival, a coin toss. Even the local cemetery becomes a quiet warning. Simple wooden markers, no fancy graves, just initials carved into weathered planks, rows of them, babies, minors, women who never made it to 40. Every name a story cut short by something modern medicine would cure in a week, if not a day. You see that, and suddenly the luxury of your modern life becomes crystal clear. Today you get a flu shot at a pharmacy. Back then, they didn't even know what the flu was. You get antibiotics with a prescription. In the West, even if they had penicillin, they wouldn't know how to use it. We flush toilets, wash hands, use sanitizer. In the West, hygiene was optional and often impossible. You might have had 2 or 3 baths a year if water and privacy allowed. Smells were overwhelming, bugs were everywhere, disease wasn't a possibility, it was a guarantee. So let's rewind. You wake up in the Wild West, coughing, with a fever and a knife wound from last night's bar fight. You need a doctor, but there isn't one. You need medicine, but it hasn't been invented. You need hope, but out here, that's as rare as clean drinking water. You might survive the first shootout. You might survive the first snake bite. But a stomach bug, a fever, a scratch from a rusty nail, that's what might take you out. The Wild West didn't kill you with drama. It killed you with silence. Slow fevers, long nights, quiet goodbyes. That's what made it so dangerous. If you're enjoying this journey into the truth behind the myths, make sure to subscribe for more raw, historical storytelling. Hit that like button and tell us in the comments what disease would have taken you out first. Dysentery, cholera, or something sneakier. It wasn't just the dust or the drought that made survival in the Wild West difficult, it was the ever-looming presence of danger from your fellow man. The towns may have had sheriffs and laws on paper, but justice was more often served with a bullet than a courtroom verdict. Violence wasn't a rare occurrence, it was woven into daily life. The myth of the lone cowboy or noble gunslinger may dominate Hollywood, but in reality, violence in the West was spontaneous, personal, and bloody. If someone thought you'd cheated at cards, glanced at their spouse, or spoke too loud in a saloon, it could be your last moment. Guns were not just tools for hunting, they were extensions of survival and ego. A simple argument could turn into a duel on the dusty main street, and no one blinked an eye when the undertaker rolled out his cart to collect the loser. Frontier justice was a concept built on speed and perception, not fairness. If someone was accused of stealing a horse, they might be hanged before sundown without a trial. Mob justice often replaced legal proceedings. Lynchings were common, especially in territories without structured legal systems. The law was not blind and it wasn't impartial. In many places, it was simply whoever had the most power, the fastest draw, or the loudest voice. Think about that. Your survival could depend on whether you looked guilty to a drunken crowd of strangers. Even in towns that had jails and judges, corruption ran deep. Lawmen were sometimes former outlaws themselves, enforcing laws one day and breaking them the next. And then there were the gangs. Groups like the James Younger Gang or the Wild Bunch were not just legends. They were feared realities. These outlaws didn't just rob banks and trains, they tore through towns like storms, leaving death and destruction behind. If you were unlucky enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong time during a raid, your fate was sealed. No amount of pleading or cooperation could save you from a stray bullet or a gang member looking to send a message. The Wild West was a place where alliances were temporary and betrayals were frequent. Even the people you rode with one day might turn on you the next if there was gold, land, or a woman involved. Many towns didn't even have a permanent sheriff. Instead, they'd appoint one when trouble came knocking. And often that person had no experience, just the biggest reputation. Sheriffs were expected to bring peace, but more often they simply contributed to the chaos. Some tried their best, but without manpower or backup, they were often outgunned and overwhelmed, and when justice failed, revenge took its place. If someone killed your brother or stole your land, you didn't wait for court. You grabbed a rifle and hunted them down yourself. Blood feuds could last for years, generations even, and drag entire families into cycles of retaliation. The saloons were breeding grounds for violence. Drunken brawls were common, and more often than not, someone ended up stabbed, shot, or beaten unconscious. Gambling dens saw fortunes won and lost in hours, and tempers flared with the turn of a card. Even celebrated lawmen like Wyatt Earp earned their reputations through violence. The famous gunfight at the OK Corral wasn't a clean duel. It was a messy, brutal shootout that left 3 men dead and confirmed that survival often depended on who shot first, not who was right. You couldn't walk into a town in the Wild West without the understanding that death might meet you before nightfall. And let's not forget the Native American tribes, many of whom were violently displaced and fought fiercely to defend their land. While settlers saw them as threats, they were often defending sacred territory from invasion. Raids, skirmishes, and massacres were tragic realities on both sides. The violence was not just among outlaws and settlers, but part of a much deeper, bloodier conflict over survival, culture, and colonization. This added another layer of unpredictability to life in the West. You might be a rancher one day and part of a militia the next, defending your homestead from a perceived enemy, or being attacked while trying to build a life on land that wasn't yours to begin with. Traveling alone was almost suicidal. Stagecoaches were frequent targets for bandits, and freight trains were like rolling treasure chests for gangs. Even walking from one town to another was fraught with danger. Wild animals weren't even the top concern. Human beings were. You might be ambushed, robbed, or murdered just for the clothes on your back. And if you did survive the attack, medical help was nearly non-existent. Gunshot wounds were often fatal simply due to infection. There were no trauma centers, no antibiotics. Doctors in the Wild West were often self-taught, and amputations without anesthesia were common. So, could you survive a day in the real Wild West? Not if you're used to 911, courtroom justice, or even just basic human decency. In that world, justice was cruel, random, and fast. And if you didn't carry a gun, or worse, didn't know how to use one, you were prey. It wasn't just a test of your aim or your courage, but of your ability to think like a predator, to strike first, and to never let your guard down. It was a place where trust was a luxury, mercy was rare, and violence was always one heartbeat away. Stick around, because in the next section, we'll step into the most grueling aspect of life in the Wild West, the sheer physical exhaustion of survival. And if you've ever thought you could handle life on the frontier, what comes next will change your mind forever. If you've found yourself fascinated by these brutal truths of the past, hit that like button and subscribe. There's more grit, more grit, and even more grime on the road ahead.